Yesterday, our cat escaped from the confines of our house, running away into the dark of the night. Devastated by this, I created a missing poster listing all his distinguishing features, like how my cat's name is Mittens and how his breath smells like cat food. With my poster in hand, I trekked out into the street, flagging down any passerbys and asking, "Have you seen this cat? Is the new horror/deduction based puzzle game? What do you call social deduction games that aren't actually social?" Created by Chunked, which is a fairly new game studio with only a handful of employees. They recently released the demo for the game around a month ago, and I figured, let's give that a try. And it was pretty good. The premise of the game is that you work for a company named Catalyst as part of their loss prevention unit. Your job with Catalyst basically revolves around you collecting cassettes. These are cats that the company makes deep within the facility for some unspecified reason. When entering an area, the company will send through a list of defects to be on the lookout for. You do not want to collect a cat with defects, as defects indicate that a cat has been replaced by the Mimic. The Mimic are creatures that live deep within the facility, also for an unspecified reason. That's basically the core gameplay loop of the game. You walk around a procedurally generated facility and you collect the good cats, and you either dispose or ignore the bad cats. But don't think if you ignore all the defects you won't have to dispose any cats. When convoying cats back to the collection room, the Mimic has an opportunity to replace one of your cats. So it's always important to check your cats before submitting them. Otherwise, it's basically game over. I would say one of my main appeals for the game is the art direction. All the cats look equally cute and silly, and they're just so goofy most of the time. They're all a mismatch of different body parts, and they're just such cute monstrosities. But my compliments to the art style don't only extend to the cats, but I just love the feel of this world. I love the use of warm yellows within these clinical lab settings. It just adds an extra level of grime and makes me feel uncomfortable. All the environments within the game feel lived in, but never too detailed. It really harkens back to that kind of PS2 era of graphic fidelity. And hey, that is always going to be a benefit in my book. Speaking of the feel of the world, I also really enjoy the humorous world building within the game. One of the only non-vital items you can interact with across the levels are these books. They serve no mechanical purpose and simply act as a piece of humorous world building. Each book's title normally contains a pun or funny play on words, and I giggled every time I picked one up. I also enjoyed that your death was permanent within the continuity of the game. Every time you die, a new employee is watching your previous death, learning from it. This is normally coupled with a funny quip from management. Both of these aspects aren't necessary, but they flesh out the world just a tiny bit more. But this discussion on art style and world building isn't complete without mentioning the Mimic. I really like how they're able to create a design that seems terrifying but still clearly based on a cat. All the aspects of a cat are there, but they're just, rearranged and weird. And I think that skewing of something familiar really adds to the uncanniness. I do have a lot to say about the monster's mechanics, but we'll get to that after we talk about the gameplay. The core gameplay works like any other deduction sim. However, the main difference between this and something like No I'm Not Human is how hands-on you are within the process. As stated before, your job within the Catalyst facility is to find cats within the breeding floor and bring them back to a safe room. However, as the cats trail behind you, the Mimic will also try and sneak up on the player and replace one of the cats. There's no indication if the Mimic has successfully snuck up behind you, so you constantly have to be looking back and checking your cats to see if anything has changed. You can also scare away the Mimic by simply looking at it. This is, in all honesty, a great gameplay loop and creates quite a lot of tension. However, my main problem with this mechanic is how it interacts with another mechanic within the game. When entering the safe room, you have to close the door before you can submit any cats. You do this by entering a terminal and completing a few puzzles. This sounds all well and good and is actually quite an enjoyable minigame. However, problems arise when you realize how it interacts with the Mimic's mechanics. When the player's inside the terminal, it gives the Mimic a prime opportunity to replace one of the cats since you can't see them. And this causes quite the problem in the game's flow. You either have to keep exiting the terminal and scaring away the Mimic, or complete it and just hope a Mimic doesn't replace one of your cats. And to be honest, this becomes quite tedious to manage. There was honestly a time in the game where I entered the safe room, completed the minigame, and then I looked at my cats and one was displaying defects. So then you have to complete the minigames again just to open the door, walk all the way to the disposal unit, get rid of the defective cat, walk all the way back to the safe room, complete the minigame for the third time, and then I would look back and another one of my cats was infected again. There is an argument here that this level of difficulty can be fun, but I just think it's too harsh on the player. And I think a lot of other players have similar complaints because the developers are actually addressing it. In the next update to the demo, they're actually going to add an indicator to the door so you're alerted when the Mimic is approaching, which is excellent news, but I do think it should be toggleable in case people do want that extra difficulty. And they also seem to be addressing my second complaint, which is the monster's aggro mode. In regular gameplay, the monster is normally very timid and runs away if the player makes eye contact with it. However, if the Mimic takes over one of your cats and you don't notice, the cat will eventually vibrate and turn into an aggressive version of the Mimic. Apparently there's a chance for the Mimic to also become aggressive if you scare it away too many times, but I never saw that. Whilst in this aggressive state, the Mimic will, well, attack the player. And this is great, it's a punishment for not playing the game carefully. But the problem is that the game doesn't teach you how to deal with the Mimic once it's in this state. Whenever the Mimic was aggroed at me, it was essentially a game over. There are apparently stealth mechanics within the game, but the game never goes over it. Fortunately though, this is also getting rectified within the game's next update. The devs have plans to lengthen the tutorial and talk about the stealth elements of the game. It's refreshing to see a dev team actually take note of community advice and implementing it within the next demo. There's a lot of potential for the full release of this game, and I'm glad they're taking steps to actually achieve that potential. But that's everything that's on my mind about the game. Make sure you check out the Have You Seen This Cat demo on Steam and wishlist it if you enjoy it. And I guess this is the end of the video or something. Bye, I guess.
Absolutely.